Alright guys, we're going to do a bit of a French defense. But before we're doing that, let me just say a couple of words I've memorized in French. I mean, I can't speak French. I mean, just a few words like bonjour mes amis. And what else? Put it as a title there. Bonne année 2024. Did I say it correctly? Because I've repeated a little bit. So bonjour mes amis, je suis Sorin, entraîneur d'échecs. I hope I did that correctly. It's good to speak as many languages as possible, so I would encourage all my friends to learning languages. It's so cool and it's so nice. Okay, let's look at the French defense right now. So e4. So French defense starts with e6, and he wants to play d5 and to challenge the e4 pawn. So that's one way for you guys to respond to e4 when white plays e4. Now, we are not going to look at knight c3. We're not going to look at knight f3. We're not going to look at bishop e2. We're not going to look at all these. We're going to go with the main move, the most popular, getting all the space possible, d4 right now. Okay, so you're taking a lot of space. That's the stuff in the French. And now, classically, the d5. That comes with a caveat. That comes with something here you got to be aware of. So if you're feeling comfortable playing the French defense, give it a go, study it in depth. Now, let me just tell you what's the setback, so to speak. The infamous bad bishop in French is the c8 light square black bishop. So you would have to find a way around with that guy. It could be b6, it could be bishop a6 at some point in some variations. We're not going to get there. I'm just pointing out that that might be the issue with the French defense here. Now, white has, say, three big branches to stemming from this point onwards. You might want to play c3. You might want to play e5. I think that's the most popular because it takes a lot of space. Taking from the knight, the natural square for developing. A little bit cramped, let's say, on the king side for black here. Or knight to d2. Okay, so let's just look at the advanced defense here. e5, definitely a choice. A very good one. Knight can't move here. Okay, so they need to find some other ways. But normally, the antidote for this is the move c5. Every single French defense player would opt for c5 sooner or later. Sooner the better. Okay, because it simply undermines the white pawn center, doubled up by the knight c6, but doubled up by the queen to b6, and it's enormous pressure on d4. Of course, white is not going to just sit and wait. Okay, so probably you might be doing c3 here. A very popular way to be responding here. Taking a lot of space, c3, one way to be playing. You could also do, let me just go back a little bit. So c3 also works here now. That's not a problem, but by the way, it's black's turn, right? So this one here, we said c3, one way to be playing. Let me look at this right move now, move number 3 for white. Also, you've got, apart from e5, you got also knight c3. Very popular way to be playing this. And then almost all of the cases, you're going to get some bishop b4 pinning the knight. Therefore, this guy can be challenged and taken. Of course, you're not going to give that guy, you're going to just pushing this guy forward again, taking the f6 from the black knight. That's also very much playable. And of course, c5. All right, c5, always the perennial threat. c5 looking at d4, so you got to be careful. You might be able to just getting the knight on f3 and stuff like that. You might be able to just very well challenge the bishop with a3. Okay, so there are very, very, very good moves here. Now, if you really want to go like a bad boy or like a bad girl here, in a good sense though, you might be very well going with queen g3. But there are a couple of subtleties here. So that's the Moscow variation, okay? The Moscow variation, if you want to be a bad boy or a bad girl. Here, queen g4, looking at the g7. You know what's cool about this one? That you pretend you don't see it and you play knight e7. If you're having black here, pretend you don't see it. Now, that's a little bit of a poisonous little guy, the g7 here. I'm not particularly recommending taking it. Okay, I'll be very blunt. Do not take it. Do not take it, because once you take it, you're just getting into some very weird variations here with the rook on g8 looking down the board. I know they haven't castle, but you're really not to be envied. Queen to h6. Yeah, okay, queen to h6. I just don't like it. I absolutely do not like this. Okay, it could be c to d4, some pressure here. You might be doing some a3 out of desperation, a little bit of counterattack, but it doesn't look good for white. So if you want to go with the Moscow variation, be very careful about that one. Not mentioning there is also queen a5. I mean, oh boy, you can't take the bishop because you're going to drop the rook here. That's a little bit challenging here. So you got to be very careful. It is playable. It is playable. You can even take a b4 and queen a1. And it's just very sharp. So be careful about that one. I think we're going to look at a game in this particular way to dealing with, if you really want to opt for the Moscow variation. Another stuff, guys, you may want to contemplate, a little bit milder. Knight to d2, which means you will not be pinned by the bishop on b4, because if this were to happen, it's a complete waste of a tempo, because it's c3. So actually with tempo, you're hitting the bishop back, which has got to move, and then you're kind of doing very well. Okay, so you may want to think about this one, but it cuts off a little bit the queen, and it blocks the bishop, so to speak. Okay, so that might be the downside for white, but again, it's absolutely very cool here. Always c5, always queen b6, always knight c6 for black to develop queen side. So keep this in mind. So that's just briefly about the French defense. If you don't want to have a problem with the bishop, so I'm just a little bit making a digression here. If you don't want to have the problem with the bishop, we might be exploring the c6 possibility, which is the Caro-Kann. Okay, it's the Caro-Kann here. And then again, white takes a bunch of space with d4. Now black normally plays d5 here. Okay, so that means, what does that mean? Well, that means that the bishop is free to go. In principle, if white were to push e5, a little bit resembling the French, but actually this bishop is so free to play. And normally it's it's bishop here to f5. So that might be a bit better for black to consider doing the Caro-Kann if they have allergy on having that bad bishop on c8. What am I doing? So, or go back to French and just stick with the French and deepen those lines. There's nothing wrong playing black and doing the French defense, okay? So keep this. So that was very briefly now put, guys. French defense for black, and I'm going to look for some Super GMs games in various French variations. By the way, drop me a few comments. Tell me your favorite variation in the French. I'm going to give it my full attention, and we're going to do it together. Go for some famous, super famous games played in the French defense, so we can extract the maximum knowledge. Thank you very much. Subscribe to this channel, guys. Follow me so we can go live stream together. Big party, casual arena, and all the best stuff to you, my friends. See you soon. Thank you.